Ready? Okay. Analogies. Your learning goals are to be able to identify the relationship being analyzed in an analogy, describe what an analogy is, and determine the correct answer to complete an analogy. This used to be on ACT testing. It's no longer there, but the reasoning behind it dates all the way back to Plato and Aristotle. So there are many benefits to being able to complete analogies and use them. What in the world is an analogy? It compares relationships between things or ideas. It highlights some points of similarity for the purpose of understanding. In other words, an analogy is a way to clarify an idea or an unfamiliar concept by comparing it to something familiar. And there are many benefits. They range from the way that your brain thinks about things to ways that you can use them in different areas. So communication, memory, perception, decision-making, critical thinking, creativity. Being able to understand and write them uses many parts of the brain at one time. And also using that in different areas of maybe jobs in the future, science, economics, political science. It improves your mental ability, and you're using it in math whether you realize it or not. So, several types of analogies. What? Let's go over some of the more popular ones. Synonyms. So we know that a synonym means that things are alike. So when you read these, you see these funny dots. This means happy is to joyful. So the relationship between happy and joyful. And then you've got is the same as sad is to depressed. Happy is to joyful as sad is to depressed. And in this case we have words that mean the same things. So if you didn't understand maybe what the word depressed means, now you understand the whole concept of the synonyms. So these two are synonyms and these are synonyms. Alright, then you have the opposite, antonyms. So in this case I wrote inflation is to deflation as frail is to strong. So we're dealing with opposites. This one is going up, that one is coming down. So you understand the relationship between those two things, then you realize you're dealing with opposites because frail is the complete opposite of strong. You've got the characteristics. Tropical is to hot, as polar is to cold. So obviously these things occur together. Hot is a characteristic of being in the tropics, and being cold is characteristic of being in a polar region. Part to whole. So how do these things function together? You've got fingers on a hand the same way that you have petals on a flower. So finger is to hand as petal is to flower. You have a degree. Mist isn't quite as much as fog, and drizzle isn't quite as much as a tropical storm. So mist is to fog as drizzle is to tropical storm. And then you have types. So golden retriever is a type of dog, the same way that salmon is a type of fish. So if somebody didn't understand what salmon was, then you could say, well, you know what a golden retriever is? It's a dog. Well, salmon's just another type of fish. The tool and the worker. So the pen is to the writer, what the voice is to the singer. It's the tool that that particular worker uses to do their job. You also have action object. So to fly is to an airplane as driving is to a car. Item to the purpose, a little bit like the tool to the worker. A knife is to cut, that's the purpose of the knife, as ruler is to measure. And the product to the worker. So the writer may use the pen. The poet creates a poem. So poet is to poem as baker is to pie. Let us take a moment to practice. Appalling is to pleasing as interesting is to Well, we have a relationship here. Appalling and pleasing. This means that you're disgusted by something, and this means you like it. So we have a relationship of antonyms. So we know that interesting has to be opposite to one of these answers. Interesting to amusing, interesting to engaging, interesting to enthralling, or interesting to boring. Well, these three things mean the same type of feeling. So even if you didn't know what these words all meant, you do know that these are similar and this one's different. So interesting is to boring. They're opposites. One more. Humble is to arrogance, as miserable is to, and again we have a relationship of opposites. So humble person likes to stay quiet to themselves and doesn't brag very much, where an arrogant person is in your face. Miserable is very sad. So we're looking for the opposite of miserable. Mournfulness, gloom, elation, or distress. Everybody yell it out at one time. Miserable is to elation. Perfect. And if you look again, you have A, B, and D all being negative emotions, where C was the opposite. So, just as a test-taking strategy, you know that you're looking for things that you could eliminate simply because they're too similar. Later, skater!